Hi, my name is Neil.
And my name's David.
We are not film critics. So, after a 5 month hiatus, we are finally back. We the boys are back. Season two, season two, is gonna be exciting. We have a lot planned out for you guys, and hopefully you did enjoy season one. If you haven't, please go back and listen to all of season one. It's only 7 episodes, and for season two, we're gonna start things off with Stanley Kubrick. Now, Stanley Kubrick being known as probably one of the most, if not most well-known filmmakers of all time. He's made the likes of 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Shining, Clockwork Orange, and many more that others love. So I guess, David, you want to start things off for us?
Yeah. So, some background on, each of the different films. So, the films I watched to research for this were 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Shining, A Clockwork Orange, Full Metal Jacket, Doctor Strangelove, and Paths of Glory. And generally, across those movies, I'm gonna give my general thoughts on so far, like what I've watched of him. He's a pretty, he's a generally solid director. He doesn't. A lot of filmmakers, they tend to focus on the characters a lot in the film, and Stanley Kubrick doesn't really do that as much as other filmmakers do. Instead, he focuses on the overall themes and the tone and the events happening and more of the action than the characters. And sometimes his characters can suffer a bit, not literally, and suffer because they're not as good as some other directors. But most of the time, his plots and the actual events are some of the best in the medium.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. That's interesting because I think out of all the movies that I've watched, and I've basically watched the exact same movies that you have, I think out of all the same movies I watched, A Clockwork Orange had the most developed character. And who's the main character in A Clockwork Orange? Let me just pull it up real quick. Alex. I think his character was the most developed out of all the other movies. Because again, you said he focuses a lot on the theme and the plot of the actual movie, and a lot of his movies, they're not gonna strike you with the dialogues and how the characters are, but it's kind of like this. It's kind of it's like the overall movie itself is what makes up a good movie, that he makes. First of all, I just want to talk about 2001: A Space Odyssey, because that was a very interesting movie. What do you think of it?
I remember the first time I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, I think the second Kubrick film I watched after The Shining, and it was a lot. I get, if it was released today, it would definitely be called pretentious, because it kind of is very pretentious. It starts literally in caveman times, and there's a 2-minute opening where it's just the credits, and I thought something with my, my player was broken. Why is this just 2 minutes of black? No, it's supposed to be like that. It's just supposed to be music. And then it starts all the way caveman times, it goes all the way to current times, and it stretches across such a long period of time and so many characters, and it's very vast in the way that it goes about introducing all these different worlds and all these different concepts, but and it's less about interpreting the movie's events literally, more seeing them through what do you take from this personally, and what do you interpret from this emotionally, and the feelings you get from watching it. It's more of an experience or a journey that you're supposed to kind of sit back and feel and kind of I don't want to use the word vibe, but vibe through, rather than trying to understand it literally as this is what happens, then this is what happens, then this is what happens, then this is what happens,
Yeah. The movie is open to interpretation, and I found that very interesting because the movie is 2 hours and 44 minutes long, right? But when I was watching the movie, I kind of the first time I watched it, I did not understand, right? It's the type of movie that you actually have to focus and you have to watch over and over again to try and understand. Because the first time I watched it, I did not understand whatsoever. It felt like it was just some random times and events were just thrown into one sequence. And it was interesting too because timeline wise, it skipped so many generations. It came from being, as you said, the caveman era, or even before that, and then into space exploration, right? If you look at it, if you look at the movie from the surface, you can just tell this is a space movie. But if you dig deeper and dissect the movie, the themes, the what's happening, analyze like the patterns that's coming back and forth in the movie, you like develop different thoughts and feelings about the movie. Because again, as I said, the first time I watched it, this movie was confusing, but then the second time around, I'm like, huh, okay, now I get it. Like the first time I watched it, I'm not even gonna lie to you. The first time I watched it, the only thing that I like, the only takeaway that I got from the movie was the monolith, and that was it. That was it. Nothing else. And then come the second time, and then I started to realize that it's more than just the monolith. It's because the dialogue in the movie isn't very striking. It's very plain, and it's a lot of it is visual storytelling. Actually, you have very long scenes of the actors, and I guess them showing you what's happening. And what I find very interesting was how he used music in it. Because if you're watching something, if you're watching a scene without, or a movie without dialogue, music has to be a part, right? Because it's gonna play a very central role. And the way he used music was amazing. Was like probably one of the best use of music I've seen, aside from Wally. He So he used the music to give the what's it called, the emotions, right? Because it didn't have dialogue, and well, not much of it, I guess, and not very sophisticated dialogue. The music was it was well put out, and it was exciting to watch, to be honest with you.
Definitely.
I'll just tell you that it was exciting.
For me, the music, like, because I remember I watched a couple videos on the movie after, and like apparently they were originally supposed to have like an original score for the movie, right?
Yeah.
But there were like the placeholder music was a bunch of these classic tracks. But then eventually, was it Stanley Kubrick? He ended up liking the classic tracks in the movie so much he just kept them there, and I think that was kind of. I would say a bold move, because a lot of times if I hear like a classic like track in a movie, it's either for like comedic effect because of that over dramatize everything, or it's gonna like make it seem pretentious. And even though the movie does like kind of slip into that, it still accomplishes it very well. The music, it still makes you feel what the director wanted you to feel.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, because a lot of times, again, classical music, it isn't used for having, let's say, a central role as much as it did in the 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's more for comedic purposes, as you said. And yeah, I think he did a great job. So wait, were you saying that the classical music were placed there as a placeholder?
Yeah.
To be then, oh wow, that's interesting.
I think, yeah. The next movie, on my list is A Clockwork Orange. What did you think of that?
Again, I think that was A Clockwork Orange was a good movie because of the characters, right? Up until A Clockwork Orange was the last Stanley Kubrick movie I watched, well, up to this point. And I thought, prior to A Clockwork Orange, the characters weren't developed at all. And then I watched A Clockwork Orange. I was like, wow, Alex, he's a very developed character. You can just tell that the plot of the whole movie surrounds around his story, right? I guess in some ways it shows the dangers of trying to mess with human psychology.
Personally, I found this movie slightly disappointing when I first watched it. I came to the movie because I heard about Clockwork Orange everywhere. I was like, oh my god, it's such a good movie. And so I came to it with pretty high expectations. And I went like, that's it? It's just about this guy who can't do evil no more, and then he just gets beat up, and then he, it's not like that. It's not amazing. It's a fine movie. Like, it's fine if it's just trying to say about, hey, there's the trying to make people do no violence. There's like lots of gray area in the text of the of like, like the gray area in like morality, and you can't just try to make someone good or bad because that's not really how it works. That's fine. It's just I feel like it was kind of executed a bit poorly, because the story, I feel like it's a bit too simplistic, if that makes any sense. Because a lot of Stanley Kubrick movies, they have very elaborate plots, and there's a lot going on inside there's a lot going on inside the themes and the plot and everything. But A Clockwork Orange, to me, felt like he kind of simplified the story and made it so the character could have more like leeway to affect it, because he kind of simplified the story, and maybe I didn't like that as much. I felt like if not the story could have been made more complicated, but that he could have explored the consequences of this facet of like not human psychology, but like the experiment he did on how that experiment affected him, and how it affected not even like just short term but also long term. That would have also been very cool, and like maybe different scenarios. I think the closest he came with that, where like I went, oh wow, this is really like a really messed up thing to do to a person, was when he was trapped in that room with the music, and he killed himself to get out. That's a really moment where you go, oh okay, you kind of that I feel like that's the climax of the whole movie, to finally like show like, hey, like this is what happens if you try to not mess with human psychology, but also try to create like a black and white definition of good and bad. You could torture someone like this, and it was a really good scene, but the rest of the movie just kind of didn't feel like it capitalized on it enough.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. You also have to keep in mind he adapted this from a book written by who's the author? I'm trying to remember. Anthony Burgess. Not that I want to read the book, but if I want to dig deeper into the story, I guess I'll have to read the book. So I guess he's just trying to, because as a filmmaker, right? If you're adapting a book to a movie, you want to do as you want to take away as little, and you want to add on as little as you can to have that authenticity from the novel. Again, you have to keep that in mind, but you do make a good point though. You see, in a lot of his movies, I feel like there's not that one climax. I feel like you see when you're writing a story, you have that introduction, rising action. Oh, sorry,
climax,
introduction,
falling action,
rising action,
resolution,
exactly.
like story structure.
Yeah. I feel like he doesn't follow that I guess template. I feel like he'd have like different climax at different points, and then he'd have I want to say he had one big final climax, but in the Clockwork Orange he did for sure with the what was that? The one when Alex tried to kill himself.
Yeah, in the room with the music.
Yeah. But in his other movies, like the 2001: A Space Odyssey, I wouldn't say that one had one final climax. It felt more like different stories had different I guess different endings and different. I guess
the climax was more drawn out.
Sorry.
The climax was more drawn out in his other movies?
Yeah. For example, let's take Full Metal Jacket, right? Full Metal Jacket was written in, I would say, 2 acts, right? First act and then second act. First act being with the in the boot camp, and the second act being in actual Vietnam. Those are 2 different stories in one movie, and those 2 different stories had 2 different climaxes in them, right? Act 1 having the suicide of again, I forget the character's name.
Yeah, see, that's the
yeah. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, the suicide of that guy, and then the other climax of the other one is
It was the Joker killing the sniper.
Oh yeah. He's a sniper thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because when you watch Stanley Kubrick's movie, and you look at it from the surface, if you know what I mean. You look at it from the surface, you could you could just, I guess, appreciate the movie for itself. But if, let's say, you're a filmmaker and or a movie critic, you dissect it, you find like different meanings in his movies that you just don't see right from the start. And that's interesting because like if you think about iconic things, right? Let's say iconic paintings. A lot of iconic paintings they're open to different interpretations, right? And so that's what makes them so iconic. For example, the let's say For Elise, right? For Elise is a classical music by
What's
I
her?
forgot. Sorry.
I don't know. One of the classical music guys.
Yeah, it was Beethoven. Yeah, Beethoven. It had that, I guess, because there was the story that he composed that for a lady, but nobody knows if it's true. That's what made it so iconic. And for let's say for 2001: A Space Odyssey, again, it's a movie that's open to interpretation, and nobody knows like what's the real meaning, and that's what makes it so iconic. And 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of those movies that's going to be constantly studied by different filmmakers throughout our lifetime for sure.
Okay, so on to Full Metal Jacket. I'm going to go with my opinions first here. So the two-act structure of this movie, like you mentioned before, I thought it was actually it was interesting. It was an interesting choice to have two separate like stories in this one movie. I just feel like the first story was way more compelling than the second story. I remember watching like the first like hour 45 minutes of this movie and being enthralled. Right, there's this guy and he's being yelled at. It's always like the stereotype of the army drill training guy yelling at like he's calling them maggots and like it's funny, but oh yeah, it's not so funny anymore when the guy kills him. Like that's kind of a tone shift and that's really good. And I feel like if they continue to work off of that, they could have built a whole movie, an hour and a half, a 2 hours movie, right? But then they decide to switch over to the second half, which I feel was less successful because I wasn't really as invested in the characters, and the plot was kind of it wasn't as like emotionally affecting, because the first like one was like really like, oh, like you felt like you not that felt like you were being attacked by the sergeant, but you very sympathized with the characters a lot. Well, in the second one, it was kind of just like a fetch plot, and it wasn't really very compelling.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying because the first story, the first act, it was about the big guy. I keep forgetting his name. The big guy and the drill sergeant, right? It was their story. And then come to the second act, it was more of like Joker's story and what actually happened in Vietnam. Yeah, I would agree with you being in saying that the first act is more compelling. It was more interesting for sure because they had that dynamic of very strict drill sergeant and then the I want to say soft, but the I wouldn't say naive either, but the idiotic one, right? And then it ended. I don't know. I don't know what they had in mind, but I don't know why they ended it like that though. Because it was super. It was very compelling. Like it had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. It was fun to watch. I like the what's it called? Like how they had the I keep forgetting his name, dude. Like how they had the big guy. Let's call him the big guy.
I think I searched that, but his name is Private Pyle.
Okay, yeah,
I think yeah.
Private Pyle. How they had Private Pyle turn into I guess the person that the drill sergeant wanted him to be. Because like if you're watching, if the first act it was all about turning the cadets into killers, right? They've said it various times. What do you do? I'm a killer. I kill. And then that's what happened to Private Pyle, and then he then kills the drill sergeant and kills himself. And then the second act, it was more like I don't want to say it was the second act was more like the war part of the war movie. You know what I mean? The war part of the war movie.
Yeah, yeah. I think the movie is also a very good anti-war movie, despite being a war movie. It's very like, it's like because the drill sergeant tries to dehumanize them, and it ends up like killing one of them, which is something that like really does happen. And then when they switch to the war part of the movie, they don't glorify it. They don't like show like it's like they're Rambo and they're taking all these guys. The guys die. They get injured. They get bloodied. Like they barely even put up a fight. They're pathetic. right? And that's what war does. War is like, it's loss, and war is not pretty, and war is not like, it's not cinematic. It doesn't like happen like it's supposed to. You don't, the good guys don't always come out on top, you know? And that's the thing is with war, like it's never good. Never. And it's never like, it's never a morally gray thing. War, because at the end of the day, war is just two people fighting over, most of the time, trivial things. You know, it's pretty trivial most of the time.
Yeah, what I did like about the second part though, I liked how they made the I guess due to the of like it being in war and them being in war, I like how they made it more personal with the characters. Because with what's his name, Joker, right? He was, toward the end, he had to kill someone, even though throughout the movie he said that he kills, but he never really killed someone until we got to the climax of of Act Two. They also got personal with the big guy, and the big guy in the second act. I'm forgetting character's name. Forgive me, but I like how they showed how he's I guess he's the manly person in the war, the super brave, but deep inside he has a soft heart. When he did try to bring back his friend when they were getting shot by the sniper. And to top it off, they had that very last scene when he wanted to, I guess he was tearing up a little bit, and he wants to have revenge for his comrades by leaving the sniper to rot to death after she was shot. You could just see, he had that close shot in his face, and he was like tearing up a little bit. It shows his vulnerability, even though he looks big, and he is big, and he carries the big guns. It shows that he is still vulnerable in the inside. And I think that's important. I don't want to get too deep, but people think that big guys, they don't have feelings, but men don't have feelings. But obviously everybody has feelings. Emotion is something that takes over everyone.
I think we've been putting it off long enough. Do you want to talk about The Shining now?
Shining out. Wow, this one. Let me start off first. First of all, I just wanna take this out. Put this out there. I don't like horror movies whatsoever. The Shining, I've heard about it for so long, and me knowing that it's a horror movie, I've always tried to not watch it. And I've always tried to, not watch scenes of it, at least. And up until you said you want to do Stanley Kubrick. And I'm like, oh wow, okay, then I guess I'll have to watch The Shining, since it is one of his more famous films. Now this was a scary movie. I think they did a great job with the scores. The score made my
Gave you goosebumps? Made your hair stand up?
goosebumps. Yes, exactly. My hair stood up.
The Shining. Okay. As a movie, I really like The Shining. I think it's very creepy. I think the characters of was it Shelley Duvall and Danny, and this is a point, this is a thing where Cooper he finally managed to find the balance between plot and characters, in my opinion. The scenes with the scares, they really get in your head. The music, obviously you mentioned it, but it's very haunting. It stays with you a lot after you finish it. And despite and the ending, it's very it feels like the whole film is building to this gigantic ending, and then it comes and it's very good. Obviously, duh. It does come apart a bit. I feel like maybe there are other ways to do it rather than just a guy chasing her with chasing Danny with an axe. I feel like it could have been a bit better. But I thought that was really good. I think, and and the character of I also really liked the way that Jack slowly goes crazy. Like it feels very authentic. Like because a lot of movies, what happens is like you don't really feel the authenticity. It's more like, oh, you see one scene where they kind of look creepy, and then that's it. But this movie really takes the time to establish that look how crazy he is. Not to say he was a great person in the beginning. He was a terrible person. He was an abusive guy. But like as the movie goes on, it becomes from a point where it's like abuse where he's denying it to abuse where he's acknowledging it.
That's interesting that you said that though, because I read an article somewhere saying that Stephen King didn't like The Shining, Kubrick's Shining.
Yeah.
Because again, I never read the book The Shining, but Stephen King said that in the beginning of the movie, Jack was already crazy, but in the book, Jack led up to being crazy. It's interesting that you said that though, but yeah, I mean, again, I never read the book. Did you read the book?
I did read the book actually, and it is.
Oh, which one did you?
Yeah, I can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the Shining book, the character of Jack is not significantly different. Like despite Stephen King's gripes, he's not significantly different. The book Jack, he's still a bad guy. He's still an alcoholic. Like he's still like not a great father or a great husband. But he does get redeemed at the end, and that's a move I think it's a very controversial move because there's a lot written about how Stephen King can't end his own books. Like he writes terrible endings. And I feel like he is like the character of Jack Torrance. He's not redeemed, but he does do one good thing, and that's kind of a controversial move because sometimes I think it's just good to let bad characters be bad. Let them be bad. Let them be evil. You don't need a redemption scene, because it is a redemption scene. Even to me, he wasn't redeemed at all. You can't have a character do 5 minutes of good for the 30 minutes of bad they just did. That's not how characters work. That's not how other characters work either. They wouldn't forgive them. But maybe it's just trying to make him hold on to one last hope of sanity. I don't know. It's definitely I don't know. I think I would say that I like the movie better than the book, but only because if I was reading the book while that score was going on in the background, I think I would have enjoyed the book more. But because the movie just has that haunting feeling with it, like it's like the movie itself is like a haunted disc. I think I enjoyed the movie more.
So, but do you enjoy reading horror books though?
I haven't read too many of them. I have read some of Stephen King's work. But generally, I enjoy reading horror books. It's not as scary as horror movies, but it can definitely also get inside your head a lot, like horror movies can. But horror movies, they can show you scary things. So horror movies can kind of cheat. They can put a scary CGI monster in your face, and you'll go to bed with nightmares of that, But a horror book has to creep you out. It has to stay with you, and that's, I think, more of a skillful art. So there are a lot of more bad horror movies and bad horror books because, the task of writing a horror book isn't as easy as putting a bunch of jump scares everywhere. You have to create a thoroughly disturbing atmosphere.
And I guess watching a movie, it's again, you mentioned the soundtrack. You could have just the soundtrack creep you out, and you don't have that effect when you're reading a horror book. I want to get into his visuals though, because again, we talked about 2001: A Space Odyssey being having very little dialogue, and it was more of like a visual storytelling. I want to focus on, I guess, his colors. This is what I noticed. I don't know. Again, I don't know. Wes Anderson. His obviously everybody knows Wes Anderson's style, but I don't know where he got that derived from. But I've seen a lot of Wes Anderson shots in Stanley Kubrick's movie. Maybe that's where Wes Anderson got his style, having the highly saturated colors, the colors popping out, the contrast and stuff like that. But I really like that because Wes Anderson's visuals are one of my favorite. The last thing I want to talk about though, Doctor Strangelove. What do you think about that movie?
I actually kind of went into Doctor Strangelove with the wrong attitude. Because so this movie is a dark comedy. It's a black comedy, right? And I went to this movie thinking it was not a drama, but that was just generally a generally serious movie. And then after it ended, and I searched up and it's like, oh, it's a black comedy. Oh, that's why it was so funny. I thought it was being unintentional. It was intentional. Oh, okay, yeah, this movie is pretty good.
Yeah, it was funny. They had a lot of irony. There's not one. There was one. It was the one scene with the Russian ambassador when the I think first of all I just want to say this. I think Doctor Strangelove had the best dialogues in out of all his movies that I've watched. There was this one scene with the Russian ambassador where the president was like, "You can't fight in here. This is a war room." And I just chuckled, dude. That was hilarious. That was pretty funny. And then there was another one with uh it was earlier into the movie. No, earlier into the scene actually, when they had I think it was the general, was it? And um the president. How they had what's it called? Like they were going back and forth, right? When and talking about the whole situation and everything. And it was funny to me how I guess the general's body language, how he was so, he wanted to go under the desk almost because he was disappointed and he was ashamed of what happened.
I think before we get to our final tier list, I think we have to talk about Stanley Kubrick's reputation as kind of not a good person. I know there's the whole conversation of separating the art from the artist, but I think in this like scenario, not that it's not possible. You certainly can. I can certainly enjoy Stanley Kubrick movies, but Stanley Kubrick, he often, like, this is very well documented. He like abused Shelley Duvall on the set of The Shining. He wasn't very kind to the actors on like many of his other sets. He often didn't he often didn't make them feel comfortable on set. He often didn't give them much direction. He kind of that's why I think his characters feel so like disinterested sometimes, or his characters aren't as compelling because he wasn't really interested in them himself, And I think that conversation, as well as a conversation about like some of the very graphic violence, and not even graphic violence, but also other graphic imagery in his movie, like the Clockwork Orange, like which scene I'm talking about when I say this, like, was that scene really needed? Did it have to be there? Like, weren't there other ways to show, thing? And I think you can show evil characters doing evil things in a movie, right? I think you can do that. I'm not arguing against the fact that you can show like evil characters doing evil things. I'm arguing against the fact that, did you have to make it so explicit? Did you have to do it like this? Did you have to make it so? Because when someone does something like that in a movie, there should be no way for a viewer to enjoy that. There should be no way. The viewer should feel very uncomfortable. They should feel like put off. They should feel like, or the thing is, I don't even think you have to show it to have the viewer have all that misery. Well, in the Clockwork Orange, in that scene, that scene, the character is having a blast. I don't think, sure, you could show, oh, look how evil he is, but I think you could have just done it a different way that wasn't so insulting. I think that's the word I'm looking for, to people who have survived things like that and have people who have experienced trauma like that. And I think putting that kind of scene in your movie, it's not the best. It's not the best.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. As there were some parts that that were you could done another way with the same impact to the story, or you could even take it out. But yeah, it was very discomforting watching that. I even skipped through it. There's some skipped through.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it's not like this is it's not where a thing this is a movie where let's say there's a scene like that, but also all the actors and actresses, they weren't pressured, they weren't they weren't they were all very comfortable in doing it, But the Stanley Kubrick isn't that kind of director where he makes his actors feel comfortable with what they're doing. He just kind of sets them loose, and just says, do whatever you want, And so I don't think that was appropriate. I just don't think that was appropriate.
Yeah, for sure. I guess as a director, you'd have to make yourself you have to make yourself known that you care for your actors, you care for your
and then make sure your actors are comfortable at all times. If they don't feel comfortable, that's a problem.
For sure. And if you watch his movies, he never had one of the same actors in two different films. A lot of auteurs, they have that one or two actors that are always in their films. Let's say for
because they like to work with them.
Exactly. For Hitchcock, it was Grace Kelly. For Wes Anderson, and it was Bill Murray, and many more, many more. And it's interesting that Kubrick doesn't. I guess he doesn't have that one character that. Not one character, one actor that he builds a good. I don't want to say, because I don't know their relationships, right? But he doesn't. I guess professional relationship, and he's also made some questionable movies, like, Lolita, the story. Yeah,
I didn't watch that. I heard about it. Did not want to watch that.
I did not watch that at all. I did not watch that also, but I've heard about the book though, because school and stuff. But the book being again disturbing, and it's interesting that he took on that role. And there was another movie, Eyes Wide Shut, that was also a questionable movie that he didn't need to do.
A lot of these things, they're like why did you do it like that? And it's not like, and the thing is, I think if the director was more open or honest, or like open to receiving criticism, or open to, like, he's dead, duh, but like obviously when he was alive, or open, very comfortable, or like he was more like critical. But I feel like sometimes he just engages with things critically, and because of his place in society, he just doesn't think anything's wrong with it, when if he just listened to other people for like 30 seconds, he would obviously see what's wrong with it. That's the kind of thing with, you said earlier, with auteurs. They don't listen to, like, when some people are like, hey, maybe this isn't the greatest idea, but because they're the auteur, because they're the artist, they're like they have the final cut privilege. They decide, oh, this is fine, whatever. Because I obviously know what I'm doing because I'm an artist. And then they kind of inflate their own self-ego. It's not a great cycle.
It's interesting that you said that, because again, another article that I read about the Shining and Stephen King. What's his name? Stephen King did not like, he didn't like the final production of the movie, but he also didn't like, how the process of the production was. He said they had some disagreements even before production when he was writing his screenplay. And I think, as a director who's trying to adapt a book into a film, you have to respect that, these characters in this story, they're not your original characters. These are not what are they called? They're not artists. They're
people?
No. Someone who wrote the book.
Oh, authors.
Yes, these are authors' characters, and this is their original story, and you have to respect that, because you're profiting off of their story, right? It's different if you wrote the story, and if you wrote the characters. I guess you could have as much freedom as you can, but again, if they're not your original characters, or it's not your original story, you have to respect the original author's opinions and
intentions.
Stories. Yeah, exactly, for sure.
So that was kind of dense. How about we move on to something a bit more lighthearted? The tier list, final tier list of the movies we saw for Stanley Kubrick.
All right, tier list.
Okay, do you want to go first? Let's go movie by movie. Let's go movie. How about 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I'll have that at S tier. S tier is being the highest, right? S tier, A, B, C, right? S tier. 2001: A Space Odyssey. S tier.
S tier.
Again,
wow.
This is a movie that you'd have to watch over and over and over again to even try and understand what's happening. You won't be able to understand it, right off the bat. I like the visuals of the movie. I like how it was so open to interpretation that it's timeless. You can watch this 100 years from now and you'll find something different from what you saw or what someone saw 100 years prior.
2001: Space Odyssey is gonna have to be a B tier. Sorry.
B tier. Okay. Yeah. All right.
I do respect his vision of like the whole overarching like story about the monolith, but the only real part of the movie where I felt really interested was the part like where they were flying to Jupiter with the robot Hal. That was interesting. That would actually grab my attention. Everything else ranged from interesting to boring. Okay. How about Doctor Strangelove?
Doctor Strangelove. Don't hate me for this, but I'll have to put that B tier. Let me explain. Let me explain. Doctor Strangelove was fun, right? It was fun to watch. It was very interesting. It was funny, but I thought that the movie was underdeveloped.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get me, right? I felt the movie was underdeveloped, and the title of the movie was Doctor Strangelove, but the actual character Doctor Strangelove had very little.
Yeah, he's barely in it.
Yeah, he was barely in it, exactly, and that was the problem that I had. But nonetheless, still a well-rounded movie.
For me, Doctor Strangelove, it's kind of sitting between B and C tier, because like B tier, it's a funny movie. It's a good movie. It's a solid movie. But like, there's nothing that really makes it stand out. I like the political commentary is pretty good. I like the mutually assured destruction. I like but it's kind of sitting between. I think I'm gonna go with C tier. It's solid. It's solid. It's fine, but it's not outstanding, isn't it? Isn't it?
All right, yeah, I get you. Full Metal Jacket.
I think that's gonna go in the. I think B tier again.
Wow.
Because everything, it's like two of the Stanley Kubrick movies so far, they've been like, wow, there are some really great sections in here, and then the rest of the movie is eh. So I just can't put it in A tier. Like it's like the first section of that movie, great, amazing. The rest of it, eh. It's every time.
Yeah. For Full Metal Jacket, I'll have to put this S tier.
Really?
All right. Let me explain. Obviously, the first act being probably the more interesting act, but what puts this into S tier is the deeper meaning that it has in the movie. It, as you said, it looks like a war film, but it's more like an anti-war film, right? It was so realistic of what actually happens in war that it frightens people, because that's what war does. It's frightening, and it's not action packed. Really, it's scary. I like how it was so realistic that me personally, I won't be able to empathize with the story and with the character, but it was so realistic that some people appreciate that that they actually made the movie, because a lot of war films, they're like action packed. They're fun to watch. This was fun to watch.
Yeah, they glorify it.
Yeah, this was fun to watch as well, but it doesn't glorify war as other war film does, and that's why I put it at S tier.
Okay, how about a Clockwork Orange?
Okay, a Clockwork Orange. I'd have wait. So what's below S tier? A tier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'd have to put it at B tier. Okay, so I think a Clockwork Orange had the most complete character in Alex, but it was just that. It was just Alex being a really good character, very interesting. I think the actor did a great job as well, but the story itself, I felt like I needed more.
For me, a Clockwork Orange, I think it's gonna have to go in C tier, because again, it's like feel like it's never really elaborated on why he wants to. I can't remember exactly. If it does, then I'm wrong here. But I can't remember them really delving too much deep into why he wants to be a bad guy. Like, why is he bad? Why is and why is why. And why does his punishment, like when he finally gets the morality good bad switch, why is that so underdeveloped? He gets one scene where it's like, oh, sorry, you can't or not. He gets one fake scene where it's in a room with people, and then one real scene where he really can't do anything, and then that's it. That's and then it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like it could have been done way better.
Okay, and the last one is The Shining, right?
Okay, Shining. I think it's gonna go A tier for me. Shining is a really good movie. It's very creepy. It's very haunting. It's basically what I want out of a horror movie. The only thing that probably holds it back is kind of, it's not simplistic, but I feel like its ending could have been a bit better. And sometimes the not the what is it, the the character of Jack, he, not that he's he's he overperforms sometimes, because that's just how Jack Nicholson is. It's just that he doesn't see this is gonna sound a bit like was a Stanley not Stanley Kubrick fan. What's Stephen King fan? That I wish Jack was a bit like he was a bit better person in the beginning. I feel like he could have been a bit like, so his transformation from like good, like not good person, but at least like okay dad to literal psycho was a bit more like it was more realistic, but it was a bit more drawn out. Not as like it was a bit more like dramatic, because in the movie right now it kind of transforms kind of like a bad dad to an even worse dad. Well, in like the book is kind of like like a bad father, but like kind of okay. But like, and then he gets way worse. Like he gets worse, you know. So I feel like that could have been improved on.
Totally. I'll have to put Shining on A tier as well. Again, everything you said about Jack being, I wish they had a more smoother transition. You know, because it was just like, it looked like he was just a terrible guy right off the bat. But reading what Stephen King said and about the book, that how in the book, you know, he wasn't really as bad as it may seem, as the movie seemed. He wasn't as bad as the movie made it look. He was in the beginning of the story. Also, because it's a horror film, you know, I'm really not too fond of horror films, but I'll put the bias aside. Shining A tier.
Okay, I think that's the end of our episode for Stanley Kubrick. And I think this is the end of this episode. Any final thoughts, Neil, before we end?
No, nothing.
No? Okay. Well, that's the end of this episode of Not Film Critics, and we'll see you next time.
Special thanks to Nicholas Biancalin. Make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel at TheEndNote, or you can follow him on Instagram at endnote_music. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at not.film.critics and on Twitter at nonfilmcritics for exclusive content and news.
See ya.